Okay, so we are officially recording. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen to get to our textbook. We're going to hopefully get there. Or it's going to decide to just go. Okay. Share screen. Everyone see the book?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep.
All right. So, and you're welcome to just look off mine or pull up yours, whatever is easiest for you. So then I'll ask you guys, I know you did some reading. Do you all prefer to read, or do you prefer me to read the selection? Just easier since we're on Zoom?
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Like a little story time on this snowy morning, right?
Right.
So we're going to read about Madam C.J. Walker. You guys heard of her before?
She sounds familiar.
No.
Yeah.
Oh God.
She was one of the earliest women millionaires. And she actually did a lot during a time when African Americans, and especially African American women, were not really recognized the way they are today. And just kind of the strides she made for a lot of people during this time period is really impressive. And so you'll kind of see some of this as we go through here. So I'm going to actually be reading from my textbook, but then I'll scroll as I read as well. And then after we're done, just to make it easy so I don't have to jump screens back and forth, then I'll pull up the vocabulary study guide so that we can do that at once. All right, so Madam C.J. Walker. Little more than a century ago, when entrepreneur Madam C.J. Walker founded her hair care and cosmetics empire, few women dared to imagine owning a business. During an era where American women were denied the right to vote and most African Americans were excluded by law and by custom from the nation's most prestigious universities, corporations,
Absolutely can't right now.
and government positions, Madam Walker transformed herself from an uneducated laundress into a corporate executive and one of the country's earliest self-made female millionaires. At a time when most American women who worked outside the home were factory or domestic workers, Walker led an international sales force of thousands of financially independent African American women. Her unlikely journey as a daughter of slaves, businesswoman, philanthropist, and political activist remains an inspiration and an example of what one woman with courage, perseverance, and generous spirit can accomplish. Born Sarah Breedlove in Delta, Louisiana in December 1867, she was the first of her 5 siblings to begin life as a free person. So when you think about like the context, she was the first of her 5 siblings. So which means, or to be born free, which means her siblings were born into a life of slavery. And so it's kind of just a weird thing to think about. As a young child, Sarah worked beside her parents, Owen and Minerva Breedlove, in the same cotton plantation fields where they had been enslaved until the end of the American Civil War. Sadly, when Sarah was 7 years old, both her parents died. With no schools for Black children in her community, with no job prospects, she married a man named Moses McWilliams when she was just 14 years old. By the age of 20, Sarah was a widow with a young child. Unable to support herself and her daughter, Leela, she joined her brothers in St. Louis, Missouri. Sarah obtained a job as a laundress, earning barely over $1 a week, but she was determined that her daughter receive more formal education than she had. While many people looked down on washerwomen like Sarah, she refused to be ashamed of menial but honest work. She did admit, however, that she was embarrassed by one aspect of her personal appearance, the severe scalp disease that was causing her to lose her hair. During the early 1900s, when most Americans lacked indoor plumbing and electricity, bathing was a luxury. As a result, Sarah and many other women were going bald because they washed their hair so infrequently, leaving it vulnerable to environmental hazards such as pollution, bacteria, and lice. To cure her condition, she experimented with formulas until she discovered an ointment and a cleansing regimen that healed her scalp and allowed her hair to grow. She began selling herself and teaching other women to groom and style their hair. Around this time, Sarah met and married Charles Joseph Walker, a newspaper salesman who helped her market and advertise her products. It was after their marriage in 1906 that Sarah Breedlove began calling herself Madam C.J. Walker, a title of dignity and respect borrowed from the women who had created the French cosmetics and fashion industries. I think that's so badass. Like she started to just refer to herself as Madam C.J. Walker and then just continued with her. In 1910, Walker moved to Indianapolis, Indiana, where she built a factory, hair salon, and beauty school to train her sales agents. She also became involved in the city's civic, cultural, and political activities. Learning of a campaign to construct a YMCA, the Young Men's Christian Association, in the Black community, she pledged $1,000 to the building fund, which doesn't seem like a lot, but back then, that's a great deal of money. Her donation shocked her new neighbors because no Black woman ever had contributed such a large sum to an organization like the YMCA. The laundress, who had once made just a little more than $1 a week, now was earning enough money to help others. Bolstered by the positive response to her gift, she set another goal for herself: to address the delegates of the 1912 National Negro Business League Convention. Arriving in Chicago with soaring confidence, she tried to share her rags to riches story with NNBL founder Booker T. Washington. Is that name kind of familiar to you guys? Booker T. Washington, another big name during all these, like the civil rights movement and things like that, like a really foundational figure. Mm-hmm. Washington was by that time a figure of national stature and arguably the most powerful African-American leader of the era. For 2 days of the convention, he ignored her overture. Undaunted, Walker waited patiently until the final day of the conference, at which point she stood from her seat and addressed Washington as he presided to the podium. "Surely you are not going to shut the door in my face. I am a woman who came from the cotton fields of the South," Walker said. "I was promoted to the wash tub. From there, I was promoted to the kitchen. And from there, I promoted myself into the business of manufacturing her goods and preparations. I have built my own factory on my own ground." So she was not going to let this man ignore her. That's for sure. She kept going, kept going, kept going. Washington was so shocked and annoyed that he still did not invite Walker to the stage, but he could no longer ignore her. The following year, Washington accepted Walker's invitation to be a guest in her Indianapolis home during the dedication of the new YMCA. Walker also contributed to the Tuskegee Institute, a school founded by Washington in 1881 for the advancement of African Americans, funding scholarships she created for African students there, which helped her further earn Washington's respect. At the 1913 NNBL convention, Washington graciously welcomed Walker as a keynote speaker. So she wore him down. She was not about to be told no. She wore him down, and he finally recognized her contributions. Walker continued to expand her market and ventured beyond the US to Cuba, Jamaica, Haiti, Panama, and Costa Rica. She hoped that through the principles of entrepreneurship that had made her wealthy, her products could provide prosperity for women of African descent all over the world. While she traveled, her daughter Layla set to work opening another school and salon in an expensively decorated townhouse in New York City's predominantly African-American Harlem neighborhood. As the Madam C.J. Walker Manufacturing Company continued to grow, Walker and her daughter organized their sales force into a local and state clubs. Her Walker Hair Culturist Union of America convention in Philadelphia in 1917 drew 200 agents and became one of the first national meetings of American women gathered to discuss business and commerce. At the convention, Walker happily listened to stories from former maids, cooks, sharecroppers, and school teachers who now made more money than their former employers. As a reward, she gave prizes not only to the women who had sold the most products, but to the women who had contributed the most to charity in their communities. So not only was she making life better for herself, she started allowing other opportunities for women to sell these products that she had created, allowing them to give back to the community and support their families. The next year, Walker moved into Villa Lawaro, a lavish estate in affluent Ivanton, Hudson, New York, not far from the homes of oil Mongol philanthropists John D. Rockefeller and railroad baron Jay Gould, two of the most richest men in the US history. Have you guys heard of Rockefeller before?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say Rockefeller Center, New York City. Like this is the same Rockefeller, extremely wealthy man, and to this day, one of the wealthiest men in the country, if you factor in kind of the inflation and adjustments. With New York as her base, she became even more involved in political matters, joining the executive committee of the Silent Protest Parade and a July 1917 public demonstration in which more than 8,000 African Americans marched up Fifth Avenue to protest an East St. Louis riot that had left 39 Black men, women, and children dead. A few days later, she and a group of Harlem leaders visited the White House to urge President Woodrow Wilson to support to make lynching a federal crime, which is insane to think about. Like in 1917, that wasn't a federal crime. Just before she died in May 1919, Walker pledged $5,000, equivalent to about $65,000 in today's dollars, to the National Association of the Advancement of Colored People's Anti-Lynching Fund. At the time, it was the largest gift that the civil rights organization ever have received. She had also revised her will to reflect her passion for education, children, and the elderly by directing 2/3 of future net profits of her estate to charity and bequeathing nearly $100,000 to individuals, educational institutions, and orphanages. So it's like, even after she passed, she was still making this huge impact on society. Today, her legacy is best preserved in the aspirations of those who are inspired by her entrepreneurial success and philanthropic generosity, like billionaire businesswoman Oprah Winfrey and U.S. Small Business Administration Deputy Director Marie Johns. In 1992, Walker was one of only 21 women inducted into the National Business Hall of Fame at the Museum of Science and Industry in Chicago. Whenever people asked Madam Walker the secret to her success, she would proudly tell them, "There is no royal flower-strewn path to success, and if there is, I have not found it. For whatever success I have attained has been the result of much hard work and many sleepless nights. I got my start by giving myself a start. So don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. You have got to get up and make them for yourself." All right, so any kind of comments on that?
I thought it was interesting that she came from nothing and was able to donate, hundreds of thousands of dollars, and even let the future income and the future profits and stuff, she still wanted to give to somebody else.
For sure, yeah, like she literally came from the parents of slaves, so really nothing. Now the time period kind of transitioned after she was born, where she was born free and then slavery was abolished, but yeah, and then she rose up and was able to do all these things for other people, which is amazing. So I just think that's such a neat story, and what an impact she made overall. Anything else you guys want to contribute or talk about? I know Zoom is not always the best way to discuss it, but
yeah, and I found it was so interesting that, it was back in the day where even Blacks were still ignored.
Oh yeah, and she was a voice that I will not be ignored, right? She was very adamant. Yeah, very adamant about that. All right, so we have our study guide. We'll do that first, our vocabulary study guide. So I'm going to share my screen to bring up the vocab. All right, so you guys see my screen now?
Yep.
Okay. Sometimes it's easy to do that, and other times it just does its own thing. So I want to make sure. All right, so I already have them filled out, and I will send my copy in an attachment in an email, but you're welcome to jot them down or just kind of listen as I talk about them real quickly. So all of these words were just in that selection about Madam C.J. Walker. And so I'll just kind of go through and talk about each of the words. They talk about how she moved into a very affluent neighborhood. So affluent meaning very wealthy. I mean, she lived in the same area as Rockefeller, which again, I mentioned was one of the richest people at the time and still in our history. So when someone says something is very affluent, it means there's a lot of wealth or riches there. She also discussed how she at first had a very menial job, but she wasn't ashamed of that. So she was a laundress, right? So she was literally washing people's clothing and making $1 a week. So menial means low pay, low skill. But as we talked about in my Monday, Wednesday class, that doesn't mean that it's not hard work or that it's not important. Because if you think about jobs today, there are jobs that are considered menial, but that doesn't mean that we don't need people to do them or that it's not really hard labor in a lot of cases. I don't know if any of you have ever worked fast food. That was my first job, was working in a McDonald's. And that was not easy. Like, it was very fast paced. It was very, sometimes stressful, but it was considered menial because you didn't need a degree and you were getting very low pay for it. So menial meaning low pay and low skill. Philanthropists, they mentioned this word multiple times. It's someone who gives money, usually money, but I also wanted to include the time or resources, because you can be a philanthropist without having millions of dollars. You can give your energy, your time, you can kind of volunteer at a charity of some sort, and you're performing philanthropy. So that's what a philanthropist is. We saw the word bequeathing on 94 in her will. It says she was bequeathing her money to these different causes. And so bequeath means to give, usually in a will situation. So you're leaving or you're giving. Oftentimes it's money, but sometimes it might be property or, you know, some kind of valuable possession. And then the word regimen, this was how she made her money. She had a skin care, like an ointment skin regimen. It's a treatment that you follow. So if they could, you know, when she sold this, it was, you know, put this on first and then do this. So it's a prescribed treatment, steps that you follow to, in this case, to heal. But you might have like a hair care regimen, your own that you follow, or a skincare regimen, whatever that might be. Any questions on those first 5 words? Again, feel free to unmute it anytime or put it in the chat, whatever works for you.
Yeah.
All right, the next 5, legacy. At the very end, it talks about her legacy that she left. So legacy means kind of like the mark that you leave on the world. What's your legacy? What's your lasting imprint that you're leaving? Some people in my Monday, Wednesday class said, like, what's your story? The story that you will have told about you after you're no longer here. Undaunted. She was undaunted with Booker T. Washington. He kept telling her, no, no, no. She was undaunted. She was not discouraged. She kept persisting until he eventually was like, okay, I can see that you're very determined, and that he actually started to respect her. But undaunted means not to be discouraged. Bolstered, we saw it on 93. She was bolstered by positive response. She was supported. So bolstered means you have some support. It kind of gave her some leverage, some motivation to keep going. Entrepreneur, we saw in our other reading, if you remember just a couple days ago, our selection 3 that we read was also about just entrepreneurship in general and starting businesses. And then she was an entrepreneur herself. So it's just someone who starts a business. And then salves is the ointment to heal skin. That's what she was selling, individual salves that kind of worked into a regimen. All right, so those are the vocabulary words for that article. Are there any questions on any of those? Give it a minute if anyone's still kind of looking at the screen or wants to type something in chat. Good. All right. So, as I said, we're just going to read that one and then our text and skill sheet. So I'm going to stop sharing this and go back to the textbook.
Yeah.
All right. On your text and skill sheet, and unfortunately, I can't really juggle very well with Zoom, but does everyone know what I mean when I say the text and skill sheet? I'm holding it up. So there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
So it's the one that we started in class on Tuesday. It had the part A, like the tacit, aware, strategic, reflective readers. And then we went through the signposts of metacognition. On the very back of your text sheet, there's apply the skill, and there were 4 questions, questions 1, 3, 4, and 8. So I'm going to try to see if I can kind of juggle this in a minute. No. Sometimes it's easy to do this, and sometimes it just wants nothing to do with it. There we go. You guys see the text sheet now?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where I'm referring to. So I'm just going to pull up the textbook again, but this is where I'm talking about. So in case you have it in front of you, or you just want to jot down the answers as we go through. All right, so these are all referring back to the selection we just read. So we're just going to look at questions 1, 3, 4, 8. All right, so question 1, hopefully you see on the questions on the screen. What is the best statement of the entire selection? So there were multiple paragraphs there, and hopefully we know that it was about Madam C.J. Walker. So if someone who was not joining us today read this selection, like how would we, or if they didn't read the selection rather, how would we summarize in one sentence what this article was about? What would you say is the best main idea or thesis statement that would capture the point of this article?
B.
Good. Yeah, I would agree. C and D don't even mention her name, and we know it was all about her, right? So we could throw out C and D. A is a little bit too specific because it didn't just focus on her parents, but B is a nice recap of what the entire article was about. So on your text sheet, or if you're just jotting this down somewhere, B would be our answer for our good main idea there. All right, question 3. From the details, we can infer. So this isn't 100% directly stated, it's implied, and we can try to make an inference from this. Walker was born before slavery was abolished in the US. Her family was ill-treated by their owners. Walker was born shortly after slavery was abolished in the US, or Walker and her family were forced to leave the plantation. Which one can we, and I kind of touched on it as I read it. Which one can we infer? What do you think? Again, if you want to put it in chat, you're welcome to do that as well.
She was born shortly after slavery was abolished.
Yeah. So C, remember her siblings that came before her were born while slavery was going on. She was the first of her siblings to be born after slavery was abolished. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic there with her family. So number 3 is C. Number 4, which one of these is true about her business? That she built a fortune selling beauty products for African-American women. She started her business while she lived in Louisiana. Her business never expanded beyond the US, or her husband was not helpful to her business. Which one was true?
A.
Yep, A. Yeah. Her products were specifically for African-American women. And the last one on our sheet, number 8. What is the main point of the section titled Successful Business Women? Woman. I'm not going to scroll up and down, but I'll just kind of remind you real quickly. That section talks about when she met and married Charles Joseph Walker. When she moved to Indianapolis, she gave money to the YMCA. Then she set a goal to go and speak to the National Negro Business League. And this is where she interacted with Booker Washington, and he eventually let her speak in, to the league. And then she expanded her market beyond the US. So it's kind of a recap. So which one of those do you think kind of summarizes that section? I know it's a little bit tricky when we're not looking at it at once.
A.
Yeah.
I would say A.
Yeah. Yep. She excuse me, she made a lot of smart decisions, and she really supported the African-American community, and all of that really helped kind of drive her business. All right. So that is, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I got them correct. Which all, because I know we skipped, which all ones did we do? We did number 1.
3.
What was number?
Here, I'm going to try to,
1.
I'm going to bring
I'm
it.
sorry.
You're fine. All right. Can you guys see my text sheet?
Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay. That was B.
There we go.
Let's see.
Any other questions on the Madam C.J. Walker story, the text sheet that goes along with it, or the vocabulary from that selection?
At the end, are you able to put well, never mind. You said you were gonna post it anyways. I was gonna say, can you put the vocabulary up? I just needed like 2 more.
Yeah.
Well, I was gonna, okay, I said we can do it at the end.
Yeah, I'll put it up there. Yeah, and I'll also send it out, because again, I know it's hard to, Zoom screen. Some of you might have a couple screens going, just kind of depends. Or if you're on an iPad or a phone, it might even be a little too small to see. But I will definitely send this to you guys via an email attachment as well, so you have it. The last thing we'll do, like I said, I wanted to keep this, between 30 and 40 minutes because I knew that it's technically our snow day. The last thing I wanted to do is just real briefly talk about selection 2. We won't read it, but I will encourage you to read it on your own. It's not terribly long. It's called.
I'm so sorry. What we just read was that section 3.
That was selection 1.
Okay.
Selection 3 was the one we read on Tuesday about the entrepreneurial spirit.
Okay.
Over people starting companies and things like that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll bring up selection 2 in just a second to at least show you what it is.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. All right, let me bring up the book again. Okay, so I'm just gonna have to see if I can navigate this way. There we go. Okay, so selection 2 is about high-risk drinking in college students. So it goes, I think it's actually a little shorter than the one we just read because it has, as you can kind of look through, it has like graphics and things like that. So again, we're not going to read it together, but if you want to go ahead and read it on your own, just to go through, we are going to talk about the vocabulary here in just a minute that are associated with this article. But that's the second selection. That third selection, I know, Janelle, you asked about that we read was that entrepreneurial one. And I'll just show you guys real quick. So if you remember reading this one about like entrepreneurs, the risks of starting one, the entrepreneurial spirit, and we got those vocabulary words from it on Tuesday, like innovative, compelling, hamper. There's that Venn diagram. Okay. So the selection on college drinking and the high risk drinking with college students, there are 4 vocabulary terms that come from that selection. Again, so that's why I would encourage you to read it so you can see them in context, but we'll go over them now. So these are the first 4 on your study guide because the other 6 we went through with the selection 3 reading. So as you look through that high-risk drinking in college students, you will see these embedded in the selection itself. So you'll see the word unintentional just means unplanned. I guess something's unintentional. It wasn't necessarily supposed to happen, or it happened in a way that was not planned. Vulnerable, we're probably sick of hearing this word during COVID, I'm guessing, right? We hear this word often.
Oh, we do.
Vulnerable populations. Not that it's not important, but I think we're kind of used to hearing this word over and over. Vulnerable meaning susceptible or likely to. So they talk about how college students are more vulnerable for drinking. They're more likely to, they're more susceptible to. Non-judgmental meaning just to not judge, to not evaluate someone or to criticize someone. To not judge or criticize. And then intoxicated, again, probably one that we're at least familiar with, the level of alcohol intake. And then from shunned down to hamper we did in class. So any questions on those 4?
The intoxicated, is that going to be reference to drinking?
Yeah, so that's an
interchangeable word.
Oh,
these 4 words. These 4 words are going to be on. You're going to send it to us, right, on the study guide.
Yep. Okay, these are the bottom part of your study guide. Yeah, and so the intoxicated, they're going to use it in terms of like showing the level of drinking going on. Okay. So they'll kind of use them sometimes interchangeably.
Okay.
Yeah, and these 4, Felicia, will definitely be on the other side of the study guide that I'll send you guys. Like this is the actual document that I'm attaching your email.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions on those? Okay. All right, so that was my goal for today, is to make sure that we got through the CJ Walker selection with the text and skills sheet and the vocabulary, and just kind of talk about real quickly the other 4 vocab along with that reading selection. So if you are able, just go ahead and read that high risk drinking and college student selection number 2, and then you'll see these 4 vocabulary words embedded in there. And then my goal for next week, the quiz for chapter 2 vocabulary was originally scheduled to be Tuesday. So I was playing around with the updated syllabus already this morning. I think I'm just going to give you guys the chapter 2 vocabulary quiz as a take home. If
Gotcha.
that works for y'all.
That's fine.
Okay, yeah, I was like, I think that's just how we're going to work it. So my goal for Tuesday is to just kind of recap these vocabulary words in chapter 2 in general, especially for anyone who wasn't able to join us today, and then take a sneak peek at chapter 3. And then I'm hoping my guest speaker will come in on Tuesday instead of today. I'm still waiting to hear back from him. And then I'll give you the chapter 2 vocabulary quiz as a take-home quiz next week. So that is the goal. So, any questions or anything?
The text and the skills sheet, is that going to be text and skills? Are we going to have to turn that in on Tuesday?
Yeah, so I will get
Okay.
that from you guys on Tuesday, because again, I know we got all the rest of this done in class already. So this was the only thing. And then I'll send out an email to everyone here shortly saying, hey, if you weren't able to join, make sure you watch the video so they can get that filled in. And then I'll
Okay.
grab that from you guys Tuesday. Anything else? I said, I'm going to throw you guys some extra credit too for attending today. You know,
Thank you.
do it.
Nice
Thank
and
you.
short and sweet.
Yeah, I was like, I wanted to keep it as short as I
Yeah.
could, especially because who knows, at any point my children can come running down here. So you just never know. But
Mine has her tablet, so she's not bothering me yet.
yeah, my oldest is in his bedroom watching TV, and then my other two are with my husband in the living room. I can hear them like talking, but
I think my sons came down like 10 times.
yeah, I've seen my daughter a few times at the stairs over here, and she just kind of waves and then goes back upstairs. I'm like,
Hi,
Oh
Mom.
my gosh.
yeah, just checking to make sure I'm right here still. But
Still here. Still didn't leave.
yeah, I'm like, I'll be here. But all right. Oh, and I see, it looks like Dom, like in the little corner there. Looks like your daughter, maybe.
Yeah.
So, all right. If you guys like have any individual questions or need anything, like stay hopped on for a minute. If not, you can go ahead and log out, and then be safe and stay warm and avoid the ice if you can. And I'll see you guys on Tuesday.
Okay.
Thank you for doing this
Thank
online.
you.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks you guys
Thanks.
for joining.
Yeah.
See you Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.